Hello, Dr. Curry. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Very well, Elijah. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. And thank you so very much for being here. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Dr. Curry, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, Doctor, I want to say thank you so very much for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you did invest that in yourself. And oftentimes, Dr. Curry, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Dr. Curry, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I used the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately, I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did. And it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. Oh boy. And not just mangoes now, Doctor. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day. I was so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Dr. Curry that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing. Your philosophies, your insight, the impact your work is having, and how you're offering your solutions. These stuff's so beautiful, Doctor. And just before I sent you that request, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Dr. Curry is doing. And not only me now, because I don't want to be selfish, and even with the audience. And here we are today with the incredible Dr. Curry. So thank you so very much for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, my man.
Thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful analogy.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay, let's get started. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today, Doctor, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Doctor, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge now, but the application of it. And you see, Dr. Curry, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Dr. Corey on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, Doctor, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, Doctor, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So, for that reason, Dr. Corey, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Dr. Corey got here. Then, afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Doctor, over to you.
Thank you again so much for that beyond flattering introduction, Elijah. And thanks for the work that you are doing on this podcast and for having me as a guest on it. It truly is an honor. And so a little bit about my story. I was born in South Florida and raised just outside of Augusta, Georgia, in a rural area called Grovetown, Georgia. And I was quite poor growing up. What we would typically call in the Southeast trailer trash. So I grew up in one of these kind of rural poor areas in a trailer park. I had a mother who was extremely mentally ill and very disturbed, and a father that was doing the best that he could to try and get by with a family and a very ill wife. So things were not easy for me growing up, and I dealt with all of the normal teenage angst and problems that any teenager has to go through. I just happened to do it poor, and and in the area that I grew up in, it was quite common for individuals when they were young to start experimenting with substances and a variety of different things, which I did. And in the process of that, when I was 15 years old, I ended up in a adolescent treatment program, what we now refer to a lot of times as these troubled teen programs. And this one was specifically focused on behavior modification. And I won't go into all the details of how and why and whatever, but they, do what they did very well. And they hooked me and got me in there. And I ended up staying in that program for 5 years. And during that time, I was quite thoroughly indoctrinated. I don't know a better way of describing it other than that. But the treatment center turned out to be one of these kind of cult places. And while you were there, you were only allowed to hang out and speak and spend time with and date and work and everything with just people in the group. So it was a very self-contained community in that respect. And after 5 years of being there, one day I just got out. They just graduated us, and we later learned that there were some investigations going on, and they were getting into some trouble. But here I was at 15 or 20 years old at the time, almost 20, and I had no education. I had the education of a 14-year-old. I had no money. I had no credit. It had been ruined in the group. I had no life skills, no marketable skills whatsoever. I had no family support, and I had no friends other than the individuals that I was in this treatment program with. And they just one day said, well, you have everything that you need to live. I'll never forget it, to live a life beyond your wildest dreams. Go for it. And I got sort of set out in this, into the world. And it was not pretty, Elijah. I'm not going to lie. There were probably the first 2 or 3 years, I was extremely suicidal, just sort of floundered back and forth, did not, it was not a pleasant sight. And unfortunately, a lot of the friends and individuals that I was in that treatment center with, a lot of them committed suicide. A lot of them got really into hard drugs and a lot of other things. I was sort of one of the few that survived. And after several years of really, really struggling, I finally started getting some footing about myself. And I moved to Europe, and I went to Ireland and then the UK and France and the Netherlands. And I did all my education over there. So I thought that my problem was that I was ignorant. So I thought, I'm never going to be that ignorant again. I'm going to educate myself as much as humanly possible. And I did that. And 6 degrees later, I left the London School of Economics with a PhD in political science and economics. And my focus had been on radicalization and indoctrination. So it was something that was my own life experience, and I wanted to study. And I really wanted to understand where ideas come from and how individuals adopt ideas, and then how those ideas are applied. What we typically refer to as the sociology of knowledge, but in political science and kind of conflict studies fields, we typically refer to it as indoctrination processes. So how individuals typically become brainwashed. And then I was very interested in how little radicals become big radicals. Ultimately, terrorism was what my field of study was. And I really quite enjoyed that. And I was a budding academic, and during the process of that, I decided that I no longer wanted to be involved in the academic world, that I wanted to work in the professional world. So a variety of things happened with that, but I decided to move back to the United States in Los Angeles and worked in a very different sector for many years, in kind of the high luxury automotive space, doing branding and marketing for various companies. And then I wound up back in the treatment recovery space. And it was through a series of sort of accidental events, really, that I ended up in the treatment recovery space again. And this time it was on the business side. So I didn't see it as a client. I saw it as a provider. And one, I found out that I can make a hell of a lot of money doing that. I was actually making more money in the treatment space than I was in the luxury automotive space, if you can believe that. But I also just started seeing the industry in the field from a completely different lens. And during that time, I saw how a lot of the things that I had experienced in the treatment world as a client that were kind of perpetrated on me were still being practiced. In fact, they weren't. They were very much in the mainstream now in a lot of ways. A lot of these kind of behavior modification programs, and now insurance companies were covering it, and there had really what I call had budded this treatment industrial complex, which is this really which is now like a $30+ billion a year industry in the United States that makes up about 2% of all healthcare spending and over 15% of all healthcare fraud in the United States right now. So working in this field, I really started to see things from a different perspective, but in the same way, if that makes any sense at all. And I started to see it from the business side and from my perspective from the client side. And after a while, I really kind of learned, like, this is wrong. What we're doing here overwhelmingly is not helping people. In fact, it's doing quite the opposite. And it's ruining a lot of lives in the sense of it's costing families a fortune financially, but also it's doing irreparable damage to a lot of these kids emotionally and psychologically through labels that are just sort of bestowed on them. Like, for instance, in my case, I was told at 15 years old with absolutely no evaluation, no background look into my family or any of the conditions that I had endured. I was just told at 15 and having maybe experimented with drugs for a year or two that I was a drug addict and an alcoholic and that I had this chronic disease, and that, the vernacular that they used at the time is they were like, you're so sick and messed up that you don't even know how sick and messed up you are. That was something that stayed with me for a very long time afterwards. So I saw what was happening in these treatment programs, and kind of naively, I thought, well, I'll just start asking and pointing things out to people in the industry, and that will change things. And because I knew a lot of the folks, at least anecdotally, were in it they had good intentions. They were like, oh, we want to help people, or we want this or that. But there was this other component of money, and I mean a lot of money, that these people were making off of like millions and millions a month that these programs were making off of individuals coming in. And I started kind of understanding the unit side economics of the industry and the kind of ins and outs of marketing. And I really saw how a lot of it was it's sales. It's a sales pitch. And they were selling sanity to families in crisis and selling a solution to families in crisis. And based on that, I decided to write my book, Selling Sanity, the troubled teen industry, the insane profits, and the kids like me who pay the price. And in the process of writing that book, I used my own personal experience of going through one of these treatment programs, but I also decided to take somewhat of an ethnographic approach towards the industry and apply that. So my book and my story is really a micro occurrence of what happened to me, but I try to expand it out into a macro instance of what's happening in the greater behavioral health field. So through the process of that, I've since published my book and started the nonprofit that I now work on and work with. And basically what we're trying to do is to bring a lot more transparency and accountability into the behavioral health and treatment space, particularly as it relates to teens. So the troubled teen industry, because these behavioral health care companies have really embraced a lot of this behavior modification style of treatment, which in its various ways, they use psychological methods. Some of them are more physical, some of them are whatnot. But I equate it to, they try to get people to be quiet by duct taping their mouths shut. Now that's effective. That's effective while those people are in the treatment programs. But when they get out and you take the tape off, they're going to have a lot to say. And usually it doesn't prepare them for the real world, like in my case. So what they're essentially doing is they're taking kids out of the real world, which is where their problems which is where my problems existed. It's where everybody's problems exist, because that's the world that we live in. So they try to take them out of this world or their world, and then put them in this sort of alternative world that is fully prefabricated. And the theology behind it, or the ideology behind it, is that by doing that and taking kids out of those environments and putting them in these kind of alternate environments with these doctrines, for lack of better words, that are kind of padded around it, that will somehow teach kids how to recover and better deal with and develop resiliency in their normal environment. There's only one kind of flaw in that model, and that is that it doesn't work. It's in fact not just ineffective; it's extremely ineffective, and most of the data will support that what these programs are doing isn't actually helping kids. In a lot of ways, it's hurting them, and it's indoctrinating them into ways of thinking and ways of being in the world that just aren't grounded in any kind of reality whatsoever. And even with that, there are still some treatment programs and organizations out there that are doing really great work with kids, and are really helping kids. So I'm not anti-treatment. What I tell people is that I'm anti-bad treatment. So the goal of my organization and the work that I do now is to really bring awareness to families that are looking for treatment, either for themselves or for their kids, and helping them make informed and educated decisions, so that the things that happen to me and my family don't have to happen to individuals that are going through treatment now. So that's kind of my mission, my goal with my book, Selling Sanity, as well as the advocacy work that I do at my nonprofit, and the professional work that I do in the behavioral health world, because I still work in the behavioral health industry.
Oh, wow. You see, that's amazing what you did. Like what you mentioned, your purpose is to help parents and those folks make informed decisions. That's profound. And the fact that you wrote a book about this, sharing your experiences, I love that. You see, you've answered almost all of my questions. Okay, but we have just one, all right? So, what would you say to parents considering these programs?
Do your homework is the biggest piece of advice that I would get. There's nothing wrong with treatment, and there's nothing wrong with certain residential treatments. But the things I always tell parents to look out for is are the therapists and the people that are actually going to be treating your child licensed therapists? And if they are licensed, how long have they been licensed for? And where did they do their education and training at? The other question would be for the admission staff, or the people that are doing the intakes on the phone when you call these programs. Are they licensed clinicians? If they're not licensed clinicians, then you are talking to a salesperson. And you, as a parent or as a patient, have a right to advocate for yourself and to ask to speak to the people who are actually going to be treating you, not the salespeople that are trying to pitch you on the phone to get you to sign up and come on board, but actually talk to the doctors and nurses and licensed therapists that are going to be treated at that facility. And if they can't provide those individuals to you, and those individuals can't give you very detailed information on what their programming is, the evidence and science that it's based in, and give you links to the licensing credentials of their providers and the third-party outcome measure studies that prove that those methods are either effective or not, If they can't provide that information, then you don't need to go to that treatment center. That is not the treatment center for you. That's the biggest advice that I would give to families and individuals that are looking for care for their loved ones.
And that's a smart one. Thank you for breaking it down that way. Very, very essential. So, to bring this to an end, Dr. Curry, for folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about the wonderful stuff you're doing, or even ask you questions, how can that be possible?
Sure. They can reach out to me anytime. I'm very active on LinkedIn, uh, Instagram, and Twitter. And just my name is uniquely spelled. So COREYJENTRY. You can find me most anywhere. And then I also own a consultancy practice where I work with families in crisis. We do not charge to work and place individuals for families in crisis. So I invite anyone to reach out to me at gentryconsultingservices.com. And you can find me there and get in touch with me on my website there.
All right, beautiful. So that's going to be the end of the show, Dr. Curry. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this very, very important information with us. It means a whole lot, my man. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, Elijah. And thanks for having me.